Wholeness, beautiful beings, welcome to Notes of Nara. Naja Rashida here. I just got back from school. Yes, if you are if you're awake in the part of the world that you live in, Eastern Standard Time, yes, I just got out. I will say this week feels very full. Career-wise, job-wise, work-wise, school-wise, life is very full, and I'm very grateful for it. Still have my health, car still running, heart still beating, solid, meditation practice. I feel really good today. Like my energy is like up, and for whatever reason, it's really odd because TMI, it's that time of the month. And, for women, it fluctuates, right? You're laughing and crying at the same time sometime. But anyway, I got done watching girls' basketball game, 7th and 8th grade. Couldn't stay for the whole entire time because that's too much. Well, I'm just emptying out my pockets. I literally just walked through the door. Just a second. Okay, so as I was driving home, I was kind of reviewing conversations that I've had with several people throughout the day of just little snippets of talking and engaging and exchanging, a lot of it having to do with kids, work, personal life, like all a blend. When you work with the public, anything and everything goes, when it comes to exchange and communication. Usually nothing out of like the norm. But one conversation towards a couple hours ago, I was on the phone multitasking and whatnot, and this individual, she's actually my guidance counselor for grad school, and she happens to be a Hispanic Spanish speaking woman. I don't know her backstory. I don't know her personal backstory, her history. All I know is, I only know her on a professional level. But she didn't say it outright, but she brought up what's taking place, the executive order of the immigrations being pretty much, illegal immigrations, undocumented immigrations. Illegal or undocumented immigrants are being removed from the U.S. Okay? I'm aware of this. Everybody's aware of it. People agree with it. People don't agree with it. I would say most people do, though. I would say just by my own research and exposure to it, it doesn't matter if you're left or right, Republican, Democrat. It's like, you pay your dues to enter into the country. You pay your dues to build a life in a country, and that's just the law of the land, right? My philosophy on such thing, and we're getting into the topic of this today's message, soul power. Okay, soul power. Is it worth fighting for an illusion? Because the illusion of separation isn't just internal. It's not just how we personally perceive our reality. It's not just how we perceive our closest relationships or professional relationships or even society. It's consciousness itself that floods into every fabric of our human beingness. So power, I see, and I understand that we're multi-layered. We have multiple identities, right? We have so many identities. I'm not only a woman and a melanated woman, a woman of color, right? I am not just female. I am not just a sister. I'm not just a daughter. I'm not just a teacher, an educator. I'm not just an artist. I am many, 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 many different things. As you, viewer, are many, 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 many different things. You mean someone to someone, and you mean nothing to no one, and you mean it. We're very multifaceted when it comes to identity And how we identify power is very interesting. What I see is that in human history, what I see is, and have observed in my 36 years on the planet, because I can only speak from that experience beyond the wisdom that comes from my greater consciousness that flows through sometimes. I will say, the relationship that we often have with power has to do with when we don't feel any. The power is when it's externalized and we cut ourselves off from our internal reality and our internal world. We then chase after this illusion of power, dominance, control, a system. It's a very square, very masculine energy that likes to put things and have things in order, in a grid. Incredibly, I would say, rigid type of energy, right? And this need to capsulize a moment, to capsulize a belief, to capsulize a way of thinking, of feeling, and of existing. And people will build systems to enforce this illusion of power. The United States of America is a great example of what I'm talking about. I am a woman, a person, a human being. I've been born in this country, on this land that we call modern day the USA. 2 millennia from now, 5 millennia from now, 10 millennia from now, if human beings, the human species exists that long, okay, this land will probably not even go by the land America. It will be a faint whisper in his story, in the lineage, right, of his story. So we oftentimes, to enforce externalized power, because we have disconnected to our own empowerment, we like to calcify things. Human beings like to calcify and fix things, and it becomes rigid, right? We see it in our own monetary systems, how you have the 1%, right, shadow elite or extremely wealthy people not only have enough money for this lifetime, but for multiple generations. They call that generational wealth, like the Rockefellers, like the Gates, like the Carnegies or Carnegie, however you pronounce that, like the Fords, okay? People who really wanted to calcify their power. I did a little research this past weekend on the history of the educational system. I watched a video on it, and I should actually just go to the library and get a book on the history of educational system in the U.S. because, wow, it's deep. It's deep. I mean, if you have eyes to see, ears to hear, you see the system. Ford, Rockefeller, these powerful men, right? These European American men wanted to calcify their wealth and their power and their manipulation over the country. So what they put two and two together and said, what's the best way to ensure that we'll have a slave mind, a hive mind? We need a type of system that will guarantee workers, that will guarantee wage slaves. We need to make them give them just enough pay to feel good about themselves, but not enough to actually prosper, and to keep them gridlocked into our system so that we can keep the production going, keep that money going so that we can build our generational wealth. I read this, not yet, but I have watched, it was like a short documentary on the U.S. educational system is based off of the Prussia at the time. I think it used to be Germany and another country. But Prussia, it used to be Prussia. They used a system. I think it was Ukraine or Poland. You historians out there, let me know, okay? I'm all about being, I stand corrected. I'm not prideful. But anywho, they use a system where how you teach and how you manipulate thinking in a classroom, if you create a certain kind of system in place, people will have a certain programming and a certain conditioning to follow orders. And that's what we do. Sit down. Raise your hand before speaking. When you hear the bell, if that's your time to leave, that's your time to go, if that's your time to stay, to get where you need to get to on time. Turn in your homework. All that stuff. I kind of peeped game, I think, maybe in my late 20s of how I saw like the system for what it was, even earlier than that. As a child, when you're in it, when you're being indoctrinated into this conditioning and programming to be kind of a wage slave to society to keep the systems going, right? So that we keep the power going, the power on per se. You can't see it, but once you're out and once you, especially as an educator, you literally can see the ins and outs of things a bit differently. Like I know in healthcare that you don't need to be a doctor, or a higher up, to see how effed up the systems are, right? So my point in this is, I think a lot of it has to do with fear. We like to calcify power because of fear of lack, that there isn't enough for me. And what I see on one level, because I don't get caught up in the race thing. I think in another 100 years, that's not going to be the main focus anymore. I think even less than that. I think within my lifetime, it's going to become more of a classist issue. It's going to become more of an oligarchy issue. It's going to become more of financial and economic, the haves and the have-nots. So people, doesn't matter if you're yellow, red, black, blue, whatever it doesn't matter who you identify, transgender, straight, bi, whatever, it doesn't matter. It matters how much moolah you have in your bank. How assets, what kind of assets do you have? It used to be like you can rely on education, not so much anymore. Education was kind of that the working man, blue collar's way out, or people in poverty to kind of work get out of the system, if you will, right? So because they program us to continue our education, go to college, they say, right? And now we all know that that's kind of part of the programming. What does this all have to do with the soul? The soul is infinite. It is eternal. It cannot die. It cannot be born. It just is. And when we manifest physically into our human form, we forget that. Everything is temperamental. Everything is life or death. Everything can go left real fast and go right real slow. Everything is chaotic. And in order to preserve life, people will take another life. That's just the name of the game in this world. And so what is the role of soul and power? And if you think about it, soul power, solar panel, right? It's very sad, I understand the immigration thing on so many different levels, even though I speak very little Spanish, and I understand it a great deal because I studied French for so long and they're very closely related. But I work and I teach and I communicate and I break bread even with a lot of Hispanic people, and I understand their culture. I grew up around their culture in my travels, in upstate New York, huge communities, right? And so I just been exposed to so much, and so I have an understanding of how things roll. And it's very sad. It's sad, I think, on both sides. I think it's sad that anyone would, you feel compelled enough to leave, to run away, to break free from your land, your culture, your language, your everything for a better life, to a place you don't know, And you're willing to break the laws of that land to do that, all to ensure your future and the future for your children. I think it's sad, that America's trying, the whole phrase of make America great again, it's like, without trying to get political here, there's a great shift in human consciousness that's taking place. And if you can feel it, you feel it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this video probably, you're going to get lost. But if you're able to follow, hear me out. The human consciousness is shifting on this planet. I'm going to get a bit metaphysical here, okay? Bear with me. I feel that President Trump is an instrument of some kind. He is an instrument. And whether you believe he's, his intentions are evil or his intentions are good, people are all over the place with that. But I'm not here to focus on his intentions. I'm looking at what is. There's a great shift. I believe that he is probably one of the last, true Americans that uphold to the old true American value, the old true American tradition and the old true American paradigm, that thing that made America great. He's in his, I think, early 80s or late 70s now, right? A generation that's, kind of on its way out, if you know what I mean. And it's very symbolic to me. The whole thing. It's very symbolic of what's happening in human society, right? The leader of the free world, right? And with this shift that's taking place, this change, I feel like the ego of the human collective knows it's facing a huge ego death. It knows, like, the ego of because we all have egos. We all have egos. A whole culture can have an ego. A community can have an ego. A workplace can have its own collective ego. We have our own internal ego, individual egos. But the human collective as a species has its own ego. Okay? And sometimes on an individual level, you'll understand this. When you know there's a big shift coming in your personal life, you feel it, right? Whether an ending of a job or a business that's about to take off or a divorce that's imminent, and it's going to fall apart right well before it happens, but it's coming. That's what's happening. And I feel like Trump is like he's a symbolic instrument of the old, right? Because America is the number one power in the globe, the whole world. It had that identity, this country has this identity of being the greatest military, the greatest thing, the greatest place, the place you run to in the middle of a war or a civil unrest. This is the place you come to, the safe place, like Canada, the whole Western world, I should say. But America is that, hoorah, right? And now, if you look at it symbolically and how he's doing what presidents do in power, he's serious about his, okay? He ain't playing no games at all. Like, he's not wasting any time, which is different. It gives off a very different flair from a lot of the presidencies that I have, which I've only been alive for: Clinton, Bush administration, Obama, Biden, and Trump. That's 5 presidents I've lived through, okay? And I will say he's not playing around. He takes his role very seriously for whatever his intention is, for the good or for the evil. I don't know. Okay, I'm not here to go into that. That's a waste of energy and time. But if you look at it symbolically, it's the ego fighting in resistance of what is inevitable. He will do what he needs to do within the next 4 years, but it can't really stop what's happening. And I say this in the most neutral space. I've said this before, I'm not left, I ain't right. I don't even know if I'm in the middle. I'm looking at all of it. Outside looking in. And please don't say I'm anti or pro. I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that damn game. I'm not. Oh, I'm anti this. I'm pro that. No. I'm not saying it. I'm saying look at this symbolically. You know that feeling when the ego is like, oh, right? It has nowhere to run. It's got nowhere to go. The ego can't hide because it's time for the ego to experience a death. That is what's taking place within probably the next 5, from here on out to the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And we all know how unpleasant ego deaths are. And I feel like he's just probably slowing it down. It may, for many people, for many human beings on this planet, it may feel like we're regressing. For some people, it may feel that we're progressing. For me, I think it's stalling. I think he's stalling. He's trying to calcify that power from an inevitable ego death that the collective will have to face. That goes beyond monetary power, social power, technological, digital power, religious power. I mean, we're going to go through it. And I feel that. There are moments right before an ego death in my life where I knew it was coming. And I would put up a fight, or I would become delusional, or I would try to preserve and calcify what power that I had. We've all done it. We've all done it. When things are failing, when things are right before an ego death, right before you get that notice, right before that spouse says, I'm done with you, I want a divorce, I want to break up, right before your business crashes and burns and you're seeing the red, right? Right before a big shift taking place. You know it's coming too. You can prepare. But that's only going to take you so far. That's what's happening. And with all of what's taking place, because it's so abundantly clear what's taking place for the human collective. And no, I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to be a soothsayer. I'm not going to be someone that's going to pull out a tarot card and say, this is what we're going to see in the year 2029. I'm not doing that. There's no need. There's no need to prophesize. If you know, you know. And if you know, then there's no need to be afraid. You know? Educate your children. Make sure that they have the wisdom that they need and the knowledge that they need. And prepare them as best as you can. There's nothing wrong with being prepared for what is to come and what is here. But soul The faith that you place into the illusion of separation, the faith that you place into the illusion of power, it mutes the voice of the soul. Can't kill it, it cannot destroy it, but it mutes the voice of the soul. It mutes the messages. It's almost like when you get so many emails, and it's like the ego will, send the soul messages to spam. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're checking your email, you're like spam, 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 right? It sets up a system where you can't even look, you can't even get a whiff of the message. It just goes straight to spam. And over time that accumulates, and the soul is like, okay, I'm here. I'm here. The soul is like present, waiting patiently. Soul operates in timelessness, formlessness, infinity. It's got forever, and it's got now. It's got the past, it's got the present, it's got the future, it's all one. And when the ego death takes place for the human collective, it'll feel unpleasant. I'll say this and I'll end the video. Can you recall post-ego death that you've had on an individual personal level? Right? And you recovered. You recovered. And you were reborn. You were a more evolved version of yourself. And that is where we're headed. So those of you who feel some kind of emotional way about this instrument, trumpet, President Trump, because he's blowing the trumpet, and that's biblical. For my understanding, like the sounding of the trumpet, that's a very biblical. It's very symbolic. Very symbolic. I'm not Orange Man bad, and I'm not MAGA good. I'm not, there's just no attachment to it. I follow the information and what I see on the news because I know it's going to affect my kiddos. It's going to affect my kids, my students, my community that I work with. So it would behoove me to know what's going on. So I am prepared for that fallout and however that's going to affect my life in some way. So, it's not entertainment for me. This is real shit, real time, real life shit that's happening and going down, and it's affecting people. So, just keep that in mind. This is why it's crucial. It's critical to do your inner work so that you could be a better support system for others. Okay? You can go through so many ego deaths in life. That's why when people say spiritual awakening, I'm enlightened, spiritual awakening, you can have one big, massive spiritual awakening, enlightenment that takes you down the path of enlightenment, and you're good, you're Gucci, and you're on your path or pathless path. Then you have multiple spiritual awakenings. You have multiple warning calls. The soul is like, wake up. And you're like, oh, shit, okay, God, wow. And it takes some time to process that event. And then, boom, wake up. And you're like, oh, okay. Okay, I'm expanding, And human collective hasn't really had that moment yet. We have shit. We got wars. We have events. We got things bubbling up. Human trafficking of children. Things like that are bubbling up. Okay? They're warning signs something's happening. Something's brewing in the air. Right? And just heed those little jolts that you feel individually, personally, and on the human collective. Right? And bless those human beings who don't even know what a cell phone is and who don't have Wi-Fi. Your life is peaceful. You don't have to do anything with the laptop. Oh, that has to be something else, to just be at one, at peace with the earth, living your life. Okay? That has to be beautiful. Oh, you guys heard that? Oh my God. Just so you know, I'm under 6 feet tall. So I have a very long body. Oh, and scoliosis, so it's not too bad, but I guess, my frame is anyway. I'm getting tired because I just jumped the subject, but I wanted to just share that. I know that was kind of an odd topic, but yeah, I thought before making dinner I could share that with you all. Like, because I can't get on one side or the other. I just have compassion, and I place compassion where it needs to go and where it flows. Where compassion flows, I go. Where compassion flows, I go. So someone's like, they need to go back to their country, Bob. These are my reasons. Okay. I have compassion for you. I completely understand. I too was born here. Multiple generations. Right? I have a huge interest in studying my lineage and my bloodline and where I come from and my last name. Where does that come from? Why am I this shade? Why do I have light eyes? Who am I? Right? So I get it on a very, like, if I choose to identify with my nationality, okay, cool. I totally understand that. The frustration, right? And on the other human side of myself, I have tons of compassion for people that are having to be deported. That's some heavy shit. I traveled abroad ever since I was a little girl. We moved to Canada for a time. And if you didn't have your papers, they had no qualms interrogating you for 2+ hours. I'm not even joking. And that was before 9/11 in the 90s. Okay? So I can't even imagine what it's like now trying to cross the border in Canada. Anyway, so I've always, respected the law traveling to Europe and stuff. Because they don't play that. Countries don't play that. But on a human level, what would you do if it was you? So yeah, it's real easy to get lost in the sauce of emotions. It truly is. And so just allow your compassion, the spirit of compassion, to wherever your compassion flows, you go, and that's where you place it. Don't try to identify with the whole power aspect, because people who calcify power to such an extent where it causes suffering, human beings have been doing this for eons, you don't really have it. People who have true power do the least amount of damage. Have you noticed? I mean, just think about that. Feel that. People who are most empowered do the least amount of damage to other people. That's not to say that they never hurt or cause pain or suffering. I'm saying that they do the least damage. People who externalize their power to calcify the illusion of money and dominance, they cause a lot of damage and a lot of suffering. This has been done before in history. You know what I'm saying? Human tribe has been self-hating for a long time. We're all one tribe. But the human tribe has been self-hating for a long time. As much as we, celebrate our differences, we'll kill each other over it. So what is true power to you? I know what it is to me. It's power, being empowered in here, charging from in here, loving from here. To externalize your power over someone else, that is one of the most, that ego death is painful. P. Diddy. Another example. That whole Diddy situation in Hollywood. Hollyweird. That's what I call that place. I will never step foot in California. I love the trees. Sequoias are beautiful. But I won't step there. LA? Nah. My blessings to the people who... Because I also work with teachers and educators who have family there. You see? There was one comment that's like, how dare you talk about spirituality and you watch the news and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, life is way more it's a web. You know what I'm saying? We're not disconnected. Just because I live here doesn't mean that I don't have a student who has family in California. It was just last week or the week before when the fires were raging, and I had a student come in, he was off. I said, what's wrong? He was like, I have a friend, my friend. I said, your friend? He goes, yeah, he's in California, and he's a fireman. He volunteered. So, the news isn't news to me. It's more of like watching a play. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's good to just, because I work with the public, I need to know these things so I can be at best, give the best service I can to my community. And that's all. So I end that with you. What is power to you? Because the illusion is starting to break, and the hammer is going to come down really hard. And that's what's happening. Because the illusion, it's almost like, I'll say this and I'll really get off this time. It's almost like you're trying to build a tent, like those wool tents, and you're in the middle of a windstorm, and the wind is saying release, let go. But you're saying no. You take your hammer and you're fighting to put down those nails, put the stakes in the ground to hold the tent, because you don't want to let go. And that's what we're doing, right? Trump is an instrument. He's a symbolic of that. Make America great. It's not just make America great. Why is it make America great again? That's in the past. He's not wanting to let something go. The Western world isn't ready to let something go. And that wind is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And we could either go and be carried off with the tent, holding on to the tent, flying in the air, or we can let the tent go and stand stationary, grounded and centered in our reality and face what we need to face as a collective. Have a good night.